So, warm greetings to our meditation time together. And I want to start with a principle of meditation that is not well appreciated, I think, or taught. And that is that in some of the challenges we have for meditation, the art is, rather than fighting the challenge, is transforming the challenge into something that helps us to be present and to enter into the meditation space. And so, for example, if there's a lot of thinking going on, and you really can't stop the thinking, and it's just like, really obsessing about something or other, and and you try to come back, but it's hard, or you keep spinning out. Then rather than struggling with your thinking, you might reorient your thinking to think about meditation. Think about what's actually happening in the present moment. And thinking about meditation is not the same as meditation exactly, but it's certainly better than the alternative, because you're pointing the thinking into the present to what's actually happening, what you're dedicated towards. And so a variation of this has to do with the imagination. That if we're thinking about the past or the future, it's partly an act of imagination. If we're thinking of thoughts of fantasy, it's imagination, especially when there's visualizations going on. We're visualizing things. And to some degree, imagination is at play with a lot of the ways in which we drift off in thought. And that's one of the reasons why it can be so compelling. And so it's also possible then to use imagination to be present, to point us back into the present moment. And ideally, for purposes of meditation, this would be a very simple act of meditation, of imagination. Imaginations which support a settling and a concentrating and becoming more attentive to the present moment. But to harness the power of imagination to be present is something that the Buddha never taught explicitly, but in his teachings it's kind of implicit, and I'll talk about that later. So I'll offer you some simple acts of imagination that maybe can help you gather yourself together and become focused and present here in the moment. And so as you hear these little exercises in imagination, keep in mind this is the purpose of them, to help us really be here in the present moment. So to begin, to take some care for your meditation posture, and the attention to the posture is the beginning of mindfulness meditation. Being mindful of the posture, making mindful adjustments. And as you exhale, mindfully relaxing and softening parts of your body. And gently close your eyes. And to begin the process of being present in the place you're at, here in this body, this time. Slowly, maybe tenderly, take a few long, slow, deep breaths. Breathing in deeply, and maybe lovingly exhale, long exhale. And then letting your breathing return to normal. And then one more round of going through your body. And on the exhale, relaxing the parts of your body that are easy to relax. And as you relax, relax into the pull of gravity. And then sitting here quietly, meditating quietly in your meditation place, evoke your imagination that with your eyes closed, imagine yourself sitting meditating where you're meditating. Imagine yourself in this space. Imagine yourself on your spot. Imagine you're seeing yourself in your meditation posture. In a sense, you're using your imagination to imagine what is actually happening here. But it is an act of imagination, a little bit removed from the direct experience. Imagining your spine, your back. Have a picture in your mind, perhaps, of what's happening with your hands. Your legs. If you have an easy ability to visualize, maybe visualize yourself sitting here, quietly, peacefully, just here. And then imagine that side by side with you is a person who really inspires you in the Dharma. Maybe the Buddha sits next to you, or Kuan Yin, Avalokiteshvara, or some teacher that greatly inspires you. And they're meditating next to you. And what would it be like to have this inspiring meditator side by side with you, sharing with you in the meditation in your space? And then imagine that sitting here in your own experience, you're sharing a lot of experiences with this companion of yours. Both of you feel the temperature of the room. Both of you hear the same sounds around you. And this inspiring person next to you, imagine how this person feels the temperature, hears the sounds. And like you, this person is breathing. And while there might be differences between your breath and theirs, there's also a lot of similarities. They also experience the rhythm of breathing in and breathing out. And maybe imagine how this person would sit peacefully and feel that rhythm and the sensations of breathing. And like you, this person feels their body. Maybe there are some differences, but a lot of similarities to be in this body, to feel it and sense it. And imagining how this person meditates and holds and relates to their body from the inside out. Maybe with peacefulness or calmness or ease. And as you're sitting with yourself here, can you feel or intuit within yourself some degree of calmness or peace, embodied calmness, settledness, which receives your breathing, the experience of breathing. Imagine what it would be like for you to be peaceful. Maybe you're not peaceful particularly, but imagine what it would be like. Maybe remembering a time that you were peaceful or contented, settled, at ease. Remembering what it was like at that time, physically, the actual experience from the point of view of your body. What was it like in your body to be peaceful and settled, at ease? And then to let go of the imagination of your companion, of some other time and place where you felt peaceful. Even the imagination of yourself sitting here. But allow there to linger some of the qualities of peace or calmness. And gently, tenderly now, allow the experience of breathing to be received in whatever calmness or peacefulness that there is. Receiving the experience of inhale. Allowing for exhaling. Letting there be an ever so short pause before you inhale. A pause where the mind can get quiet. In which then you can just receive the inhale when it wants to begin. An ever so short pause before the exhale, so that you can feel more fully how good it is to allow for the release, the exhale. Imagining that all around you and all within you is lots and lots of space, lots of room, and breathing has lots of breathing room. Room, space which is peaceful, expansive, easeful, and breathing in and breathing out, allowing and releasing, is intimate with all the space and room, peace that's also present here. Imagining the mind, what it would be like if there was a refreshing silence in the mind. A silence which was maybe spread through all the space that's here. A silence that makes your thinking not so important. Silence that allows the thinking to relax and dissolve, diffused into the silence. Breathing in and breathing out in space and silence. Having a very teeny pause at the end of the out-breath, the end of the in-breath. Relaxed pause can be a little protection from being caught up in your thoughts or your imagination. Little reminder, stay here with the direct experience of breathing. And then as we come to the end of this sitting, take a few moments to imagine some of the people that you'll encounter today or communicate with today or maybe think about today. And imagine what it would be like if you could encounter them being peaceful, having a simple goodwill without any animosity or anxiety or any strong desire or expectation for anything. Imagine what it'd be like to meet them in a peaceful goodwill that is not so strong to disturb them, but just nice for you. Imagining that possibility, and then wishing, aspiring, that whatever benefit and goodness that's come from this meditation, that it might be translated in your body, in your heart, and the mind, to walking through the world in a way that brings benefit to others, whether seen or unseen, whether you know knowingly or unknowingly. May it be that the merit the benefits, the goodness of our meditation together spreads into the world with kind actions, supportive actions, generous activity for the welfare and happiness of all beings. May all beings be happy. May all beings be safe. May all beings be peaceful. May all beings everywhere be free. So, my friends, the kind of the subject for this week is the fifth and sixth step of mindfulness of breathing, which is to experience joy and happiness in meditation. And it's certainly not easy to experience that, and you can't just do it just because the instructions say so, you should do so. But to explore this territory of joy and happiness, meditative well-being, some of the conditions that support it, some of the things that bring it about, can be very helpful. And so that's a topic for today, this week. And so there's the precursor, often in the suttas, for joy and happiness is gladness. And the word is pamojja, P-A-M-O-J-J-A. And pamojja comes from the kind of the root word. We don't never know if the root or the etymology is that important for the people who spoke it, but it's certainly a fun game to play. And so the pa, as the prefix, can mean either outward or upward. And the mojja comes from the word for face, mokka. And so the idea of something at the face, an uplifting face, a face that's rising up, or maybe a mouth. Sometimes the mouth is closely associated with this word for face, and it's the lifting of the mouth. I think of it as uplifting up the corners of the mouth to make a smile. So it's that which makes us smile, or a kind of maybe a beatific kind of upward gazing at what inspires us. And in fact, for the Buddha, he encouraged people when there's difficulties in meditation to think about or imagine something that's inspiring, or but inspiring not in a way that's activating, because the word for inspiring also has the meaning for confidence or peacefulness or kind of brightness. So that which brings brightness or confidence or peacefulness, kind of a peaceful, confident brightness maybe. So we'd say simply in English, kind of inspired. And to be inspired, when we sit down to meditate, involves activating the imagination. And we find that imagination is regularly referenced in the teachings of the Buddha in relationship to meditation. And this was certainly very different than how I was introduced to both Vipassana practice and Zen practice, where the explicit and the implicit instructions was not to be involved in thinking so much, and certainly not to be involved in imagination. This was the meditation practice about just being present for things as they directly are, unmediated by concepts, unmediated by the imagination, just the experience in and of itself, and the direct sensations, the direct contact with things, and that's definitely true. But it becomes true as the meditation gets more and more centered in the present moment. But to get ourselves centered in the present moment, and centered in the present moment with some joy, some well-being, imagination can be harnessed, can be utilized for that purpose. And so the Buddha encouraged people to think of an inspiring topic. And some of the things that he talked about that were inspiring was to think about the Buddha himself, think about someone who you're really inspired by their practice, by their being, how they are in their life, in a way that kind of is inspiring enough to really want to sit here and be here, and kind of puts to rest other thoughts and concerns that keep you distracted. And or to the encouragement is to be inspired by your own virtue, and of course that requires us to be virtuous. And but the word virtue really means virtuous conduct. So you don't have to be inspired by what you're feeling on the inside. The Buddha's teachings are be inspired by how you act in the world. And if you're acting in the world without causing harm, if you haven't stolen any money from the bank lately, or killed any of your neighbors recently, or done all kinds of things, then that's a source of being inspired. And it doesn't mean you have to be 100% virtuous, but to recognize the way that we are living a virtuous life, even if it's just for today, not to be burdened by the past so much, but rather be inspired by what is good and beneficial. And so to be inspired by one's own virtue, maybe that's a hard thing for many people to imagine, to experience, but it's certainly one of the teachings of the Buddha, and one of the purposes of being virtuous is to create the inner context to be inspired and gladdened and uplifted, so it's easier to stay present. And the other thing that the Buddha makes explicit about what's inspiring is mudita, the appreciative joy, to think about the things in the world that bring you a wholesome, nourishing kind of joy, like so to share in the joy of others who are doing wonderful things, and be inspired by that. And so this idea of being inspired by things is not meant to take us away from the present moment or to be a spiritual bypass. It is not meant for us to dwell there and just kind of keep thinking about it and fantasizing about it, but rather to do it just enough that it really orients us to the present moment. It brings this uplifting kind of feelings and goodness that we're capable of then feeling, and then riding those feelings into the present moment. It's sometimes easier to be present if there's some modicum of well-being that's here as well. And it's not meant to be, again, an overriding or a bypass of the challenges we have or the suffering we have, but it is helping to create a context where it's easier to be with the challenges, to work through them and meditate with them, breathe with them. And so the principle here that I think that supports this idea of using the imagination for something inspiring is that to do it when the alternative is worse. Human beings spend a lot of time in their imagination, imagining the future, what's going to happen, the terrible things that are going to happen, imagining the past, remembering. Some percentage of our memory is fantasy. It's well known that we don't necessarily remember accurately what happened in the past. We're telling ourselves a story, we spin it a certain way, we spin it around the things that really have a charge for us, whether it's good or bad, and we kind of stretching certain parts of the story, the memory, to fill the space of memory in a way that's not completely accurate. And so sometimes that can be very depressing and agitating. Certain fantasies can be not helpful at all. And so if we're doing that anyway in the imagination, then it's possible to use the imagination. Don't fight the imagination then and try, which might not be working, but harness the imagination to help you be here in the present moment, to gather together. And then when you're here enough, then you can let go of the imagination and then sit here and be present. So, I've, in the course of this teachings, I've offered some imaginary kind of scenarios, images to help. For example, I love this image for breathing of the waves of the ocean washing up on the sandy shore, and kind of I have this image of myself of the especially when the waves once they're washed ashore, they're washing up across the sand and making the sand wet for a while, and then they're receding, and then as it recedes, the sand is wet, but then the water kind of that's on the surface kind of gets pulled into the underneath the sand, and so you get a whole different texture or feeling of receding and absorbing. And this image of this I use it different ways in meditation, but imagining the breathing, the experience of breathing are the waves, and my body is the sand, or the experience of breathing, the sensations that come and go, the cycles of upswelling and receding with the exhale, is washing across the shore, the sand of awareness. And it kind of that image kind of keeps me there and involved. I've known some people who have, one person in particular who used the image of a large bird, maybe some large, wonderful, majestic bird flying in the sky, and the inhales and the exhales were the flapping of the wings, the slow, long, just flapping in the wings of the bird. And that kind of kept her engaged and involved and flying along. And so to use the imagination to help us be connected, and then to use it to help us be inspired. And to know, as I've said, how not to overuse it. How to use it so it's onwardly leading in the direction I talked about yesterday, that we're going towards doing less and less activity to quiet or still or states of mind, and to more from coarser to the more refined, more active to the more peaceful. And so we use these things to support that process, knowing at some point we have to let go of it, not relying on it too much, not overdoing it, not depending on it, not using it as a antidote so we don't have to face our difficulties or work through them, but rather as a way so that we can be present in an effective way. So, particularly I want to end now with the idea of inspiration, with that which brings a brightness, an uplift, a delight, brings confidence, brings trust, brings willingness to engage and practice, and this idea of an inspiring things. And I would encourage you for the next 24 hours to consider what inspires you, and stay close to it, thinking about it, and visiting it, being with it, somehow be connected to it. Or maybe there's many things. And maybe you can talk to others, friends or anybody strangers, about, say you have this assignment to talk about what inspires you, and you'd like to share a little bit and hear from them what inspires them, and maybe in ways that are spiritual in nature, or has to do with some of the fundamentals of what gives our life purpose or value. And in doing so, I hope that you have some wonderful conversations and some wonderful time thinking, time with yourself. What is it that inspires you? And maybe that you can stay close to that. So thank you very much, and we'll continue a little bit this the way the Buddha uses imagination for meditation tomorrow. Thank you.